Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. So I just wanted to briefly introduce today's workshop. It is a very basic workshop in regards to what is conflict, how do we deal with conflict, and what management styles have we created for ourselves to be able to deal with conflict on a daily basis. Some of you might think that the information is, well, Olga, this is very common sense. Of course I would do that. Or of course I would not do that. But what I would really like you to please focus on is the emotional intelligence aspect of it. What emotions drive us to effectively deal with conflict? What emotion drives us away from actually being to effectively deal with conflict? So if you can have that state of mind set, it'll be easier for you to grasp some tools, some skills in regards to helping you help others, help the community, and of course manage conflict a little bit better, because of course what everyone needs in life is less stress. So hopefully this will be something useful for all of you. Okay, so we're going to start off with a very basic exercise. What is conflict? So what words come to mind when you hear the word conflict? Fight. Perfect. Anyone else? I'm sorry? Argue. Correct. Hostility.
Disagreement.
A disagreement? Yes, definitely. Harassment. Okay. Anyone else? Confrontation, right? Intimidation. Okay. Anyone else? Does anyone think of the word challenge when it comes to conflict? An opportunity when it comes to conflict? A test? A way of experiencing something new and different even though it's the same situation. Okay? Usually when we think about conflict, we think about all the negative synonyms that comes with conflict. Fighting, arguing, being at odds with someone, colliding with someone. Yet if we're able to step away from that and see every single conflict that occurs in our lives as a challenge, testing our ability to do something new, try something new, be more patient, or an opportunity for us to learn something new, an opportunity for us to deal with the same situations time and time again, however, make each situation an opportunity to help someone and an opportunity to help ourselves. Okay? And you will have to excuse me, the mouse is a little challenging. There we go. Okay, so early messages about conflict. So what factors affect the way that we, as in the individual, deal with conflict? So we're going to target and we're going to identify three emotions, attitudes, and experiences. And we're going to break down each one and talk about how this deals every day in our lives. Okay, so emotions. Okay, emotions is defined as just a natural reaction, right? When something happens, when a situation happens, when something is said, when we're approached in a certain way, when we're reading someone else's body language. Okay, we have every right to react the way we do because it's something natural. However, when we're dealing with emotions, where we're trying to figure out what exactly is going on with us, what we're feeling, can we effectively deal with conflict? So let me ask you all a question. Is it the same to be irritated or angry and pick up a phone and talk to a client, just as if you were calm or happy or just heard a funny joke and pick up the phone and talk to a client? Is it the same situation? No, definitely not. Because when you're irritated, okay, if that client is irritated or complaining, or you've heard this story a million times, you're not going to be able to, one, effectively listen to what that complaint is about or how that client is impacted in regards to the reason for their call. And number two, you're going to feed off that negative energy, that negative vibe that's coming from this angry or irritated or hostile client. And you're going to find yourself with an elevated voice, okay? And maybe a little bit of your intonation is going to be a little irritated, okay? Maybe without even realizing you're going to be condescending. Why? Because this information you've heard time and time again. So it's easy for you to respond, well, this is what you're supposed to do, versus, I understand what you're saying. Let me inform you of all the steps that you need to do to be able to deal with it. It's going to be very, very different. Emotional intelligence is the ability for us to be able to identify our emotions, but also to be very well aware of someone else's emotions. So when we have emotional intelligence, we have the opportunity to see, okay, if I continue talking in this manner, I'm triggering that other person to react a certain way, okay? If I'm responding to them in a calm, cool, collective voice, then I'm inviting the other person to give me as much information as they can for me to be able to answer their question, for me to be able to point them in the right direction in regards to where they need to go to find help. With emotional intelligence, not only are we more aware of other people's feelings, but we are also very well aware of how we are reacting. It's almost like we have an out-of-body experience and we're able to see, okay, is this the way that I would want somebody else to answer me or talk to me if I called customer service? If I called Verizon irritated over a phone bill that I cannot afford this month and I know that they made an error, okay, do I want that customer representative to talk the same way as I'm talking to this client? I don't. Which means if I want to be able to have a cool, calm conversation, even though we may be talking about a subject that can easily be seen as a confrontation, I want to still be able to have a very smooth conversation with someone. I want to be able to let them know what the problem is, give them suggestions, or be able to say, what can be done about this? How can you help me? In order to be able to receive that from the other person on the phone, or be able to receive that from the other person on the counter, or even when you're dealing with a family member or a coworker. When we are fully aware of how we are approaching someone, we can also be fully aware of what we are not saying, yet is heard and received louder than our words. I'm talking about body language. I'm talking about facial expressions. I'm talking about mannerism. It's very, very important to know and understand that everything that we're not saying is heard more than what we are saying. 70 to 80% of what we are not saying, which is our body language, our mannerism, our facial expression, is heard more than what we are saying. Let me give you a good example. When I'm working in my office and I'm just plugging away, I have a pencil in my hand, I'm typing, I'm answering a phone, someone comes in and interrupts me, and I'm just fully focused on what I'm doing. I did not realize that I always had an object in my hand. Whether it was a piece of paper, whether it was a pen, I always had an object in my hand. And so when I was talking to someone, what I did not notice is that I was pointing when I was talking. So imagine if someone comes in and I'm cutting something with scissors, that's not going to be a very good message that I'm delivering to the other person, okay? And I noticed it that because I had a pen and a staff member was talking to me, and I kept seeing her kind of flinch as if something was being thrown at her, and I'm thinking, wow, she's having a very stressful day. And then I stopped in mid-sentence. I realized that I was talking with my pen, and I was making myself very evident that the conversation that we were having was not a positive conversation, but still a crucial conversation that we had to have. I put the pen down, And believe it or not, that completely changed their mood. It did, because she no longer felt threatened at the object in my hand. Because of course, even though in my mind I'm fully aware that I'm not going to throw that pen at her, she doesn't know that if we're in the middle of a crucial conversation. She has no idea. She can only react to my behavior, my mannerism, my facial expression, and if there's an object in my hand, if she adds all of those things up, she has every right to think that I'm going to throw that pen at her. Okay? Does everybody see where I'm going with this? Emotional intelligence is key in regards to helping us have a more stable and awareness of what's going inside us to be able to project a more professional demeanor, as well as to be able to hear what we're talking. Because sometimes when we are explaining something that's repetitive, and I know probably all of you deal with the community at large, and so there's a lot of information or a lot of programs that you have in-house that you know all the ins and all the outs of it. You've repeated it several times. It's part of your daily task, and you're repeating it for the 100th time at 4:45 p.m., and you can't wait till 5 o'clock to be able to go home. Okay? Does that 100th person that you're talking, okay, is it their fault that you've had to repeat it that many times throughout the day? No, because it's part of our job serving the community. So again, if we step back and we can say, okay, this is the 100th time that I'm explaining, but I'm not explaining it 100 times to that same person, which makes it very different. I'm explaining the information to someone who I haven't spoken to before, who is listening this for the first time, and who needs as much information to be well aware of how our services work, so that they have the tools to be able to do it the right way. So that I have that accomplishment in and of itself, that I'm helping someone know how to apply, how to qualify, and how to be able to follow up in regards to our services. Okay? So emotional intelligence is definitely key in regards to being able to help us serve better, as well as to be able to control some of the stress that we bring onto ourselves. Forgive me, this is a task in and of itself. Okay. I am on slide number 4. Emotions? Oh, perfect. Attitudes, thank you. Okay. So attitudes, how will your thoughts about a particular situation affect how you deal with conflict? Okay, so attitude is a thought, a feeling that you have in regards to something. Sometimes our attitudes determine how we're going to react to something else. So for example, if we have been dealing with a situational conflict with someone who we work with every day, someone who we converse with every day, we already have a preconception, so to speak, in regards to how that person is going to react, or how the conversation is going to go. How many of you have a friend, a family member, a coworker, a typical client, so to speak, that you know exactly what's going to come out of their mouth? Yes? Okay. Same. This is what I'm referring to. In regards to attitude, we are already talking for the person. We are already bringing an end to the conflict without letting the conflict take its course. Okay? And a lot of the times this prevents us from actively listening, from really understanding what the person is trying to say. Okay? So before they even end their question, they're in mid-question, oh, I know what she's going to say, so I'm just going to interrupt her and answer. Okay? If we go back to emotional intelligence, what happens to us when we're trying to convey some information to our supervisor, when we're trying to help our coworker understand what a new task or a new project entails, and they interrupt us. How do we feel about it? Okay? Not the best feeling in the world, definitely. Okay? We definitely conclude a lot of things. Well, we feel disrespected. We feel that what we say or what we are trying to communicate is not important. And that, of course, hinders the relationship that we have with that person. So what we need to do is be able to have a positive attitude. And how do we do that? Okay? You know your bodies, you know yourself more than anyone else. If it's something where you have to walk outside, breathe in fresh air, if you have to walk away from the situation, if you have to let the phone ring, let the phone ring, let it go to voicemail. You know what? It's better for you to have a positive state of mind, a positive attitude, rather than pick up the phone and get irritated with the next person that talks to you. Because that can only end negatively, correct? You're irritated, they're irritated, a complaint turns into an argument turns into, I want to talk to your supervisor, right? It's something that started off with a simple decision, do I answer or not answer? Now, just for my sake, and so that I don't have a conflict with Denora later, I'm not saying don't answer your phone at all during the day. What I am saying is that make sure that you have a positive attitude, a positive state of mind in where you can pick up that phone, in where you can answer inquiries, in where you can be helpful towards somebody else. Because if you can't, it's just like trying to help somebody where you haven't helped yourself first. It's trying to make someone better when there's a lot of things going on with you that you haven't really figured out yet, and you're trying to figure out someone else's problems. It's not going to happen. And so with attitudes, it's always a good idea to be able to say, do I have a positive attitude to be able to deal with this client? Okay? If the majority of you are individuals that deal with clients who are calling in or complaining or irritated or angry, then you know I always need to be well aware that I have to have a positive attitude every time I answer the phone. In our mediation department for Community Action Partnership, we deal with conflict resolution. So it's not just workshops, it's being able to provide mediation service. So individuals who have neighbor-to-neighbor disputes, landlord-tenant disputes, small business disputes, they can call us instead of going to court and receive mediation services. Okay? What does that entail for me? That means I am the first person that this neighbor is calling to find help. That means I'm listening to a 5-year dispute between two neighbors who were really good friends at one point in time and now have nothing but negative, awful things to say about their neighbor. Okay? So I know that all of that negative concern that they have, I need to listen. Because I need to let them know that I am listening and that I am aware and that we do have a service that can help them. I'm sure it's the same thing here. When you're dealing with clients, it's a certain situation that they're in. And so they're calling you for information. They are calling you for help. They don't want someone to say, I know, we do this all the time, or we deal with clients all the time, or this is what you need to do. They don't need to hear someone who's speaking to them matter of fact. They need to speak to someone who is listening, who is sincerely listening to their concern and be able to point them to the right direction. Even if that means, sir, madam, you know what you need to do? You need to go to our website. We have a new online application. I'm not able to take applications over the phone, but please let me give you my website. You can go there. It's a click of a mouse, and then be able to fill in your application and send it in, and then we'll take care of the rest. Okay? Rather than you just need to go to our website, fill out an application. That's all the information I can give you. Very, very different tone, very different mannerism, and of course it's going to be received very differently. It's going to go from, oh, thank you very much for your help, I'll go ahead and do that, okay? Rather than, I need to talk to your supervisor. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. Went backwards. Okay. Experiences, okay? If you're dealing with a conflict that you've come across before, okay, you already know how that conflict's going to turn out, okay? I'm dealing with a coworker who, for some reason, there's always this, he always forgets to do this. And it's something that he knows he's supposed to do, and he always forgets to do it. So the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time that it happens, it's not going to be a conversation. I'm going to reprimand him for doing something, right? Okay. With experiences, again, we are already concluding, we are already foreseeing how we're going to solve this conflict versus letting the conflict take its course. It could be that there was a miscommunication. It could be, like my situation last night, the server went down and there was no files accessible. Okay, so how can I ask him or require him to do something that he does not have access to? Okay, if I'm already having a certain reaction based on my experiences with him, then I'm not giving him the opportunity for him to communicate with me, for him to communicate what prevented him from doing something that he was supposed to do. Let me go back to the example of the phone call with the online application. Okay, if the same customer calls back an hour later, a day later, lets you know what was your website again? Can you please give it to me? And you're like, I just gave it to you. I just gave it to you. Didn't you write it down? Versus yes, let me give it to you. That person, you're giving the person the opportunity to say, you know what? I went to the library. On my way to the library, okay, I dropped the piece of paper that I wrote down the website in the bus. Of course, I never found it, which meant that I had to get back on the bus, go back home, and call you again to get that website. Okay? If we're able to just let every single conflict run its course and be able to deal with every conflict as if it was a new experience, then we're giving us the opportunity to learn something new and learn how to deal with that same conflict in a different way, as well as giving the other person the opportunity to communicate with us, to give us the information that we need to help them understand why we're giving him or her the information for the third, fourth, or fifth time. Okay. I know probably what I'm saying is easier said than done, especially when you're dealing with this every day, almost like on repetitive mode in regards to it. But again, if we are able to give ourselves the opportunity to step back and see, do I want more stress in my life? Do I want to be upset every time I come to work? Do I want to have that negative relationship with the community at large or with my coworkers? If you want to change, if you want a more positive working environment, then the change has to come with you. Dealing with emotions better, okay? Having a positive attitude, and letting each experience help you learn something, even if it's the same lesson, right? I mean, not every lesson is going to be the same, even though it may be structured the same, even though it may be delivered the same. I know when I've had participants that have come through our workshop time and time again, you know, Olga, the last time I was here, I was too busy writing the information that I missed how I can use this new tool or use this new skill to be able to deal with some of the problems I've been having at home. For some reason, the first time it didn't click and the second time it did. Okay? So allowing our experiences to teach us how to deal with conflicts more effectively. Okay? Generational conflict. The handout that I give you actually has a generational chart, and I made it nice and big so that you are all able to follow on this next section that I'm going to cover. So generational conflict arises whenever interests or ideals of one generation collides openly with the other one. Okay, so a generation is defined as a cohort, usually divided from a span of about 20 years, okay? And it's different characteristics, different experiences, different values that shaped us depending on the generation that we were born into, okay? So all of you are going to see that we start off with, okay? We start off with traditionalists. So traditionalists were born between 1927 and 1945. Some of the characteristics that they share are wise, skeptical of technology, submissive, hardworking, and very traditional in terms of values and morals. Okay? Some of the experiences is that they had large families, right? A lot of these families were born into farms or homes and where they needed to have a lot of help around the house. They experienced World War II, the Korean War, industrial economy, and that's when the United States was in power. Okay. In terms of workforce, they retired or near retirement now. They are overwhelmed by technology, and they're more committed to staying with one company. Okay. Baby boomers, born from 1946 to 1964, loyal, controlling, competitive, independent, and career-oriented. Experiences were the American dream, rock and roll, suburban life, and the Vietnam War. Okay, so if you see, there's already a huge gap between the traditionalists and the baby boomers. Okay, traditionalists, large families, okay, valued tradition, valued their values in regards to what they held dear. And with baby boomers, it changed. It's almost like, well, in order to have a large family, I need to work more, okay? I need to have more money. I need to be able to devote myself to be able to accomplish a lot at work, even if that means working 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. Well, how did that affect the next generation coming in? Generation X, born from 1965 to 1980, okay, there's a high divorce rate. High divorce rate. Why is that? Well, if you're working all the time and you're neglecting your family, obviously you're creating a huge burden and you're detached, so to speak, to that value of being close to your family. Okay? Your career-oriented stigma, okay, prevented you from seeing, you know what, I need to have a balance. I need to be able to work and provide for my family, but I also need to spend quality time with my family. I also need to let my spouse know that I value him or her, that I love him or her, okay? So Generation X, as the divorce rates went up, values changed. Traditions changed. Okay? Now, if the man was working, then the woman was working too. If he was goal-oriented, then she was goal-oriented too. Okay? And now they're faced with the challenge of, what are we going to do to be able to still work, still have a career, but still have a home to come to, a family to tend to? What do we do? Okay? So Generation X learned from the baby boomers, okay, in regards to balancing that life and being able to see, okay, divorce rates are going up because there's not enough quality time at home. Divorce rates are going up because the husband and or the wife are working full-time, giving the spouse left at home the opportunity to get depressed, the opportunity to venture out into other things that can, of course, damage the relationship, damage the wife and husband, the family aspects, the values, right? Then we go on to Generation Y. Okay, so this is a generation that's very technology savvy. Now let me ask you this. When it comes to traditionalists who are skeptical of technology And they are in somehow, way, shape, or form communicating with individuals from Generation Y who are technology savvy, okay? It's almost like a fear of the unknown, okay? Grandparents don't know how to relate to their grandchildren. Why? Because they're on their phones all the time, or they're glued to the computers all the time. And so what can I say? How can I relate to them if they rather go through social media to be able to have communication? If they rather text than pick up my phone call, what can I do? And so this generation gap is actually creating a lot of friction in regards to those two traditions. But when individuals realize that in order to be able to communicate with someone who shares different values, different characteristics, and different experiences, they need to meet them halfway. Okay? I had a grandmother one time at one of my classes that stated that she cooked a nice dinner, invited her kids over, and they were on the phone the entire time. And so she tried to have conversations, and they would nod or shrug and not really say anything but 2 or 3 words in regards to responding to her. And so she asked, she's like, why can't we talk? Why can't we just sit and just talk and enjoy dinner? Well, we are talking. Well, I don't understand how you're talking if I can't hear you. Well, I'm texting. And so what this grandmother understood is that you're sitting across from your sibling and you're texting versus talking. And to them, this is easier, this is faster. And so the grandmother's sitting there trying to understand how texting is faster than talking to the person right across, right? And she doesn't understand. And so what she said, you know what, I don't know any of the technology stuff that you do, but I do know that we can talk. If we're sitting right across the table, we can talk faster than we can text. I don't care how fast your thumbs move per second. We can talk. We can sit and we can talk. And the grandmother said it, and she realized if I say it in a nagging, with a negative demeanor, these kids are going to get up from the table, right, walk away, go lock themselves in the room, and not talk to me. But if I approach them in a way where it's funny and it's open and it's an invitation to them to talk, then they'll listen to me. Then they'll be a little bit more open-minded in regards to having a conversation with me. Okay? Grandmother was very, very happy, and kids actually learned to communicate face-to-face versus over text. When generational conflict hits at home, it's very difficult because it's almost like they're speaking a different language. Okay? It's almost like each generation has transformed language that we're used to using into something that has a different meaning. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. In regards to generational conflict, have any of you experienced or believe that it's also a conflict that's really huge in the workforce? Yes or no? Yes, definitely. Being able to work with individuals who are very technology savvy and can build express sheets in half the time that someone else who learned it a different way, who has a different method of doing a certain graph, a certain report, it's going to get very frustrating. Why? Because Generation Y is going to be able to finish things a lot faster than an older generation. And it's not the fact that, oh, I know and you don't, or I'm better and you're not. It's more of how can we communicate to be able to share this valuable information and be able to work together to be able to get the same results, to be able to be effective and efficient in the same way without always feeling that we have to compete against each other. Right? But it takes the opportunity to be able to share that information. Also, when dealing with the community at large, okay, whether you're dealing with clients or whether you're dealing with volunteers. So going back to my example of doing the online application, To you, it may be very easy to give the information, but for someone who doesn't know how to even turn on a computer, okay, it's going to be very stressful for them. Okay, they change their method for some reason. This is how they want to do things. I need to let them know. I need to let them know I can't do that. I'm not technology savvy. I don't know how to do that. So with that situation, we have to deal with that situation very differently, okay? Do we allow someone to do a paper application because of the fact that they, one, don't have access to a computer, or two, they don't know how to use the computer? That's something that we have to deal with on a case-by-case scenario. We can't just assume that the person on the other side of the phone has the same characteristics as we do. And that in and of itself can cause a lot of conflict, because we assume that everybody has the ability to have access to the internet because we believe it's so readily available, right? A lot of our clients, when they come in for our utility assistance and our weatherization program, they all have some sort of smartphone, okay? Even though they have some financial stress, okay, they have some sort of smartphone. So when we're giving them that information, we expect them to know, okay? But what we don't realize that maybe they do have a smartphone, but there's only a limited amount of apps that they know how to use, right? I'm assuming Facebook would be the one that they know how to use very well, yet other applications they might not. So we can't assume that even though we live, or we are now in a generation that technology is at hand, that a lot of individuals are very technology savvy, we can't assume that everyone has those characteristics. When we are able to push aside our assumptions and be able to ask questions to clarify information, it'll be easier for us to help our clients. It'll be easier for us to communicate within employees. It'll be easier for us to communicate at home when we're dealing with so many different generations. Has anyone ever experienced a generational conflict, and where, oh, would you like to share? Okay. I actually just experienced one a couple months ago with a volunteer out in the Indio area. So all of our mediator volunteers have all the tools that they need to be able to conduct mediation cases for us. And one lady in particular said that she just felt that there wasn't enough material. So I sent everyone an email and asked them, to give me feedback. Some of the individuals that I hadn't got an email back from, I would call them just in case, one, they didn't get my email or they didn't have computer access, to just get their feedback in regards to what else did they need to make the mediation service easier out there in the area, since I wasn't there every day to be able to meet their needs. And one gentleman said, Olga, I don't understand why we need more material. We don't. Anybody can go in, get a 99-cent tablet, and be ready to go. And I was literally shocked. I stopped breathing, and I said, I can't ask my volunteers to go out and buy a tablet. I was just like, especially where it's impossible to find one for 99 cents. I mean, those can run pretty expensive. And he's like, Olga, what are you talking about? You go into any 99-cent store and you can get a tablet. And I was just like, well, maybe out in Indio, but not here in Riverside. And like, tablets do not cost 99 cents. I'm like, you mean $99? And he's like, no, 99 cents. I'm like, I'm sorry, what are you referring to when you're saying the word tablet? And he said, you write on it, you flip the page and you write on it more. And I'm thinking, are you referring to a notebook? And he said, yes, I'm referring to a notebook. And I was like, I am so sorry. You almost gave me a heart attack thinking I had to invest in tablets, because in his generation, that's what they were called. In my generation, they're called notebooks. And that was something that again, I allowed myself to just keep this conversation going and going and going, and I know that all of you realized that my voice and I was getting a little bit heated. I'm trying to understand, and I don't understand what he's trying to say, when all I could have asked at the beginning of that conversation was, can you let me know what you mean by a tablet for 99 cents? He would have been able to explain, and I would have been able to prevent all of that discussion in where I just assumed he was talking about a tablet. Okay. The reason I'm sharing this with you is because it, as the gentleman in the back said, it happens a lot. Sometimes it happens every day, where we assume that one word means another, where we assume that because technology is here and present and getting better and faster each and every day, that everyone has that same information. Okay. So generational conflict can take place, again, at home, in the workplace, or in the community. And each generation has its own point of view in regards to life and has different life experiences that lead them to believe different things. So for example, language. Language is huge. I don't know how many of you have students, kids in middle school or in high school, but we do peer mediation, and it's completely different. Everything that in my generation used to mean something means the complete opposite today. The expression ate it means, to me it means eating. I ate a piece of cake, I ate my sandwich, and to them it means that someone fell really hard. So when I heard that expression, I'm looking at them, and of course I have this confused look on my face, and I'm so happy that they were able to read so they could help me understand why that person ate it when they slipped and fell. And they had a lot of other expressions that completely went through my head, and so they finally stopped giving me the definitions, and they said to please look at an urban dictionary so that I can learn to communicate with them. It happens a lot, and I'm sure it happens with previous generations as well. Something that happened 20, 40 years ago that meant something means something very different in the 80s, means something very different in the 90s, and of course means something very different now. And it's all about having the opportunity to clarify what they mean by a certain expression. Not to assume, not to make our own conclusions, but to ask for clarity. Okay? Situational behavior. Okay? Just because we learned to effectively deal with our emotions by learning more about emotional intelligence doesn't necessarily mean that the person sitting next to us or that the person that we're talking to face over the counter or on the phone has that same emotional intelligence or has the same capability to move or to learn as fast as you can. So we do have to take that into consideration, that each person is different and each person can react or treat the same situation very differently. So something that you're able to answer cool, calm, and collectively, the person sitting next to you might not. Okay? In regards to that, it's being able to stay as calm as possible, especially when you're dealing with individuals who are very emotional, who are very irritated when they're talking to you. Because if you feed into that, then you lose focus on what the actual situation is all about. You lose focus on what the other person is actually trying to tell you, and you're focused more on the emotion. You're focused more on how you are reacting versus what needs to be done to end this phone call, what needs to be done to deal with this conflict, and what needs to be done for everybody to, move on to our lives, get back to work. Okay, am I going to allow this situation to get the best of me so that way my day is ruined and it's only 8:50 in the morning? Okay? Or am I going to be able to learn from this? Am I going to be able to take this situation, kind of figure out what happened, how did it start, and what went wrong? And what I can do to be able to maybe prevent it next time, or to be able to deal with it a little bit better next time. How many of you have ever picked up a phone call and before you even say, "Good morning, this is Olga, how may I help you?" they're already screaming and yelling about a situation? I've had a lady who literally was screaming at the top of her lungs every single word. And so, of course, I had to hold a receiver because I didn't want my ear to explode, okay? I had to let her, as irritated as I was getting, I had to let her vent. I had to let her say everything that she needed to say, because even if I interrupted her, even if I informed her, "Ma'am, I can't help you if you're yelling," that would have triggered her even more, right? That would have made her upset even more. Now, I'm not saying, okay, let people yell at you as much as they want to, but give them the opportunity, vent, and say, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you were trying to say. This is what I got from you. Is this your problem? Is this what I need to help you with?" Because that way, at least that acknowledgement lets them know that you were listening. Even though they weren't communicating in the best way, even though you were starting to get irritated and upset and angry, and you were very well aware that you were about to lose it, or what sometimes happened is click, "Oh, I'm sorry, we got disconnected." Okay? It happens. It happens. We can't control how other people will react. We can't control other people's emotions, but we can control our own. We can control our own. And unfortunately, it's not going to go away. We're always going to have those angry phone calls and where we didn't say anything or do anything, but the other person is very, very, very upset. Okay? What we can do is learn how to best deal with those phone calls. Again, am I going to pick up this phone call? Do I have a positive attitude? Am I in a good place to be able to help this person? That's one. Number two, once I'm talking to the person and they're angry, okay, do I let them, do I allow them to tell me their problems so I can help them? Or do I interrupt them just because I already know what they're going to say? Okay? Remember that each experience, each conflict needs to run its course to be able to see how you can best help the other individual. It includes our interactions on a daily basis with our coworkers as well. Okay? We, or at least some of you, have been working with each other long enough to know our triggers, right? Our buttons. Okay? And in order for us, as in you, the individual, in order for you to have a better day, it's best to deal with the conflict in a positive way. It's best for you to not continue to push those buttons or to trigger the other person, because even though you may think, "Oh, I can't wait to just irritate her, or get under her skin, or be able to make him angry because I'm angry," okay? Or is it better to say, "You know what? I don't want to let this ruin my day, okay? I don't want to be angry and frustrated. I have plans after work, or I have to pick up my kids after work, or I have to do this after work, or you know what? I need a calmer day. I need a peace of mind. I need to have a day in where I'm not irritated, because I'm starting to realize that I'm a very angry person." Okay? It's all within us. It's all what we are going to do, what we are going to say, how we are going to react in order to be able to say, I want to change. Okay? Values and traditions. Values and traditions are very, very different with each and every person, because it's what makes us unique. Are we all agreement on that? I had a very interesting conversation with two middle schools, and we talked about values and traditions, and actually religion got into the conversation. And they stated how religion used to be a factor that prevented them from having friends. I had two girls in the room who were very best friends. They became very, very best friends in 5th grade. But in 6th grade, they had a fallout because one was a very strong Christian girl, and the other one was Jewish. Okay, and they started talking about some of the traditions and values that they had at home because it was the holiday season, and they started to think, you know what, we're very different. Okay, we don't think alike. We can't be friends. And then they hadn't finished their 6th grade year yet when they realized that they still enjoyed the same games during recess. Okay, they still both got very good grades. They were both the top in their class, and they still had a lot of fun when they were interacting together. And it was, to me, it was shocking that they were only in 7th grade and they were able to realize that, you know what, we just had to respect each other's values and traditions in regards to religion and put that aside and be able to focus on everything that brought us together in 5th grade. Everything that we shared, all the characteristics that are very similar between both of us. And this conversation, believe it or not, went on for a full hour because every single student, I had about 35, had an experience in regards to that. And it had to do with cousins, it had to do with neighbors, it had to do with teachers, and where, you know, once they realized, you know what, I can live with that. That difference, that thing that pulls us apart because we don't see eye to eye on that one thing, doesn't prevent us from seeing eye to eye on so many other different things. On being able to communicate in so many different other levels, and being able to say, you know what, that is set aside and this is what we're talking about, or this is our conflict, or let's stay focused on what the points are so that we can move on to the next thing. Okay, it's amazing what you can learn from children when they get to talking, when they really open up and they talk about conflict in a very deep sense. Okay, it's almost an eye opener for us as adults in regards to things that we have come accustomed to. Okay, well, I can't deal with individuals like that because they are a certain way. Well, then now we're generalizing. Are all those individuals that way? Do they all share those same beliefs and values? Well, no. If we give the opportunity to communicate on a different level, or to know that that conversation is off topic, then we choose to deal with conflict a little bit more effectively. Then we choose to stay positive in regards to seeing a conflict as a challenge, an opportunity to learn, and as a way to gain new experiences, versus always seeing conflict as a fight, as an argument, as a way to collide with somebody else. Okay. Any questions up to that point? Okay, what we're going to do now is we are going to take a conflict response inventory that is in your handout, and it is just 15 statements, okay? And you are going to respond to each statement depending on how you respond to that conflict. So don't think about each situation or each conflict you've had. Just think of it in general terms. So for example, number 1, I yell, scream, or threaten to fight. And based on whether your reaction is most of the time, which is a 3, some of the time, which is a 2, or rarely, which is a 1, you're going to put that number in the number 1 box at the bottom. Does everyone see that? Okay, so you're going to do that with all 15 statements, and then you're going to add up your totals, and we're going to then define the key terms to be able to see what your management style is. Donora, can we make more copies? Okay. Is everyone ready to continue? Yes? Okay, wonderful. Okay, so everyone has their totals? Yes? Okay, so based on your highest total, and yes, you can have 2 up to 3 totals that are the same, which means that you go back and forth on a couple of conflict management styles. So we're going to identify all 5: competing, collaborating, compromising, accommodating, and avoiding. And we are going to talk about what they are, what they mean, when is the best time to use them, and when it's not the best time to use them. Okay? Okay, so the first one is competing. How many of you got competing as your highest conflict management style? Really, no one?
Oh, come on.
So that your highest total was Roman numeral number 1, which is competing? Okay, that's never happened before. Okay? Competing is when you're seeking to control the conflict and to dominate the outcome of the conflict. Okay? It's usually the attitude of it's my way or the highway. This is the only way to accomplish this. This is the only way to deal with this conflict. If we don't do it my way, then it's not going to be done anyway. Okay? This competing mode happens a lot, especially when it's in a close relationship, such as a husband and wife, right? However, it also happens, okay, in certain situations and where it would be appropriate, okay, to use this as a conflict resolution tool. Okay? Can anyone think of a situation where it would be appropriate to take control of the conflict? Okay. When you're following guidelines, okay? This is what the guideline says. This is what we need to do. We're done, right? Okay. How about when you're in a situation where there's no consensus, right? Everybody's so undecisive. Everybody doesn't know what to do. Somebody has to be able to make a decision, okay? That's where the competing mode would be a good tool to be able to use, right? Okay. For those that are a little bit more on the competitive side, sports, right? When you're a leader and your team is depending on you to be able to make quick and fast decisions, this would be an appropriate tool. When would it be inappropriate to use this tool? What situations would it be inappropriate to use this tool? Anyone? How about when you're in a close relationship, right? You're in a close relationship, you're both bouncing off ideas, you get irritated with the situation and you make a decision, okay? Would that be an appropriate situation? Only if you want to purposely damage the relationship, then maybe I can see where you're going with that. But other than that, you're looking more at just getting your way and not focusing on what others' thoughts, beliefs, and values are. Okay. Also, when you're working in a group that actually wants to be able to give feedback, a group that actually wants to be able to build a consensus in regards to which direction to go with a certain project or a certain task, a community event, that wouldn't be the best situation to use this tool because all you're creating is a negative experience, right, for those around you. Okay? All you're creating is for people to label you, pretty much, right? Oh, well, she's bossy. Oh, well, it's always her way. Oh, well, it's if he says, what he says goes, okay? We need to learn to be able to treat, again, each situation, give it its own experience, and again, let the conflict run its course. Okay. Sorry about that. And it's slide 13.
That's a new slide, Tamara. Unclick that.
Sorry, I can't. There's
A glare? Perfect. And then it would be the bottom icon right here. There we go. Yes, perfect. Sorry about that. Once I thought I had mastered it, there's technology for you. All right. Collaboration. Did anyone get a high score for collaboration? Okay, wonderful. This is actually considered the ideal conflict management style, and I'll share with you why. So collaboration is when you choose to discuss the issues and find the best solutions that make both sides happy. So this is your opportunity to discuss each person's point of view, to be able to bounce off ideas. This is not meeting in the middle. This is not you give some and I take some and then I give you and you take. This is something where you're able to identify exactly what the other person wants, but also be able to communicate what your needs and what your wants are. Okay? This is the opportunity for you to put everything out in the open and to be able to say, okay, I'm okay with this. Are you? And be able to have the other person agree 100%. So when each of you are 100% happy with the situation, each of you received exactly what you wanted from the discussion that you've had to solve the conflict. Very simple example. There's one orange left in the kitchen. Two sisters come in at the very same time and they both want the orange. They're both arguing and fighting over this last orange. They sit down and they talk about what their needs and wants are. One sister is able to share, well, I want the peel to be able to make a cake, and the other one says, well, I want to squeeze the orange to be able to have orange juice. Each of them got exactly what they wanted, but they wouldn't have been able to get to that point if they chose to what siblings usually choose is, well, I'm older, well, I'm taller, well, I'm going to hit you if you don't give me the orange, right? Bicker back and forth, right? They decided to sit and talk. Same thing can happen in the working environment. Same thing can happen with relationships. The only thing about this conflict management style is that it's time consuming, right? Not every opportunity, not every conflict gives you the freedom to be able, okay, well, let's sit down and let's see what each needs and wants are, because it doesn't happen that way. One, it's forceful, so the other person doesn't feel sincerity in regards to solving the conflict. And two, there's just not enough time in the day to be able to deal with each conflict that way. However, when used on a regular basis, it becomes easier to identify what needs to be said, what needs to be done, what needs to be asked to be able to get to that point a little bit faster. Everyone follow me with that? Right? When you use it every day, it's like a tool. It's almost like something natural that comes out of you, and where you're able to say, you know what? Okay, this is a problem. I need to know exactly what she needs from me, or the time frame that he needs from me, or just be able to get a little bit clarification so I can go get this done, submit it, turn it in, hand it to him, whatever the situation may be. Okay? We get to learn almost like little roadmaps in regards to getting to that point a little bit faster. But I know in the beginning it is very time consuming, especially when you're dealing with someone who can be very emotional, right? Because you need the opportunity to allow them to kind of vent a little bit, right? And we all have those people in our lives, whether they're family members, right? Whether they're friends, whether they're coworkers or clients, the community at large, we have those individuals. So we have to be able to be considerate in regards to when we're able to give them the time, let them know, inform them. You know what? At this time, I'm dealing with a deadline, but I do want to talk about this. Can we talk about this a little bit later? Okay? when we're able to at least acknowledge the fact that you do want to invest in the time to be able to collaborate and be able to deal with the conflict more effectively, that acknowledgement alone goes 100 miles, right? Because at least that person knows and understands that even though you're not able to stop what you're doing right this second and give them the attention that this conflict needs, you're able to do it at a later time. It's still important to you, but you also have jobs, you also have duties, you also have things that you need to get done at a certain point in time. Okay? Everyone with me? Okay. Let's try this again. Perfect. Compromise. Compromise is when you meet halfway. Compromise is when you split the difference. When you're able to not be 100% okay, but at least be satisfied with the end results of the conflict. This happens a lot in mediation, okay, especially when there's high emotions, and especially when one person feels that they were more negatively impacted than the other person, so the situation feels unbalanced to one person versus the other, okay? In these situations, as much as we try to put in a collaborative effort, we can only compromise. We can only help these individuals meet halfway, and that happens a lot, especially, again, when we're limited in time. We have to be able to say, you know what, I can't do that, I'm not okay with that, I don't agree with you. However, let me pitch this idea. What do you think about this? To be able to then walk away from your collaborative efforts and say, you know what, we're not getting anywhere with that. We've already invested this much time. We need to be able to find a middle ground. Okay? When compromising over the phone, that's a little bit more challenging, right? Because you don't have the person face to face in regards to breaking down the pros and cons of the situation, right? But again, when you're meeting a deadline, when you've allowed this person to talk more than they should have, and we've all have clients like that where they can go on and on and on if we let them. Or the repetitive client that they've already stated the problem and they're starting up again and then they're starting up again, right? When those situations, we can let them know, you know what, I'm about to leave to a presentation, I'm about to walk into a meeting, I got all your facts, let me see what I can do and let me call you back with some solution. Again, you're not meeting their conflict 100% because of course everybody wants their conflict, solved right there and then, but at least you're meeting them halfway in where again you're acknowledging them and you're letting them know that something can be done, not meet what their needs and wants are, but at least help them in some way, shape, or form. And that's what individuals want to hear. We had a visit a couple weeks ago. Mr. Jay Orr came to visit Community Action Partnership, and he said, when you give individuals the simple acknowledgement that their problem exists and how it affects them, we then move into effective customer service. We then give the individual that we're helping, we give them our 100% attention, and we let them know that we care. We let them know that we are community servants that are here for the sole purpose of helping them, okay? Even though they may not be our only client that day. Even though we may have 99 other individuals that we need to help, but at least that one person leaves knowing that they were helped in some way, shape, or form, or feeling at least a little bit better, that they have a little bit more clarity, a little bit more direction in what they need to do. Happens the same thing when you're dealing with family members, when you're dealing with the community at large, when you're dealing with coworkers. To be able to give them the simple acknowledgement that you understand the conflict, okay? That you can provide some sort of direction of what they need to do or where they need to go, or at least give them the acknowledgement that their feelings are important too. Okay? That what they're experiencing is very different from what other people are experiencing. I actually had dinner the other night with my sister, and I couldn't believe how friendly, from the hostess to our waitress to the bus boys to the manager, everyone acknowledged our presence when we walked in. How wonderful would it feel for the Riverside County community to feel that way every time they come into a county building? To feel that, wow, every time I go into a county building, even though they're not able to answer my question right there and then, even though I may not qualify for this program, they at least acknowledged me and they at least gave me some direction. We would have a lot more satisfying clients, and we would be able to eat away at that negative stigma about government employees. I don't know about you, but I've had my share of bad experiences of individuals that I've never even said a word to, and because they see me driving in a county car, they already have an attitude. They already want to shower me with all their negative comments, right? I've actually had individuals who, if I was 1 inch closer, they probably would have spit in the mirror or the window of the car, okay? And I could easily be fearful, and I could easily be very upset and very angry, but at the same time, I step back and say, okay, what county office did he walk into and didn't get the help that he needed and or got treated poorly, and that's why he has that negative attitude towards me, not as an individual, but as a county. And so I applaud Mr. Orr's statement to us and just empowerment in regards to being able to deal with conflicts, or to deal with clients very differently, where it's more of a universal county community service that we're giving, where it's more of a customer-friendly approach that we're giving to be able, again, to eat away at that negative stigma. With compromise, it's a very powerful tool because, unfortunately, not every single client that walks into our door can we serve, right? They may not have the backup documentation that we need to be able to approve them. They may not qualify. They may be very close in getting approved, and there's one thing in the form that they didn't complete, or there's one item that they're not under that makes them disqualified. Rather than say, I'm sorry, I can't help you, why don't we work together and say, you know what, my coworker actually went to a collaborative meeting the other day, and we're not able to help you here, but it's possible that you can apply for this program out at this agency. Okay? I'm sorry that I'm not able to help you. I'm sorry that I cannot approve you because you do not qualify under all of our requirements. However, here's something that can help you. Okay? It's the same thing when it happens to us. We want to be able to go into a place, even if it's something small as going in and having dinner. We want to be acknowledged. We want to be able to say, I went here and I'm going to go there again, or I'm going to tell my neighbors, my family, my friends about it, because this is a place where they go and they acknowledge you, or they accept you, or at least they give you direction. Okay? They're not able to meet all of my needs and all of my wants, but they're at least able to meet me halfway and are able to give me a resource. They're able to point me in the right direction in regards to what I can do and how I can get help. Accommodation. Did anyone get a high score on accommodation? Okay. Accommodation is usually the good guy, good girl approach, right? We want to accommodate the persons that we work with. We want to be able to give them the way because we want to be able to have a peaceful atmosphere, a peaceful environment, whether it's where we live, right? The loud neighbor that I'd rather him being loud over there than being loud towards me, right? Or the client where, you know what, I just want to make him go away. I just don't want her to call back anymore. So I'm going to accommodate. When we choose to accommodate, we really have to see when it's the appropriate time and when it's the inappropriate time. When it comes to relationships, so the people that you interact with each and every day, having an accommodating style, okay, means that you're always giving in. Means that you believe that if I give in this time, they'll give in the next time. If I'm good this time, they'll be good next time. Okay? That if I agree with him now, he's going to take my side next time. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, right? Because otherwise, everything would be great. It doesn't. When we choose to have this accommodating style each and every day, we're choosing to devalue our morals, our traditions, our beliefs, and put more value into someone else. Okay? When this is a close-knit relationship, it really damages the relationship, because when you decide to compromise, when you decide to collaborate, you are changing the game for this individual who is used to you accommodating or giving him or her way every single time. So now the problem is not the conflict at hand. The problem is you. What is wrong with you? You're always doing things my way. You're always giving in. You always agree with me. Why all of a sudden are you changing things on me? Then you have to go back and explain to them, no, I want to meet you halfway, but I also want you to meet me halfway. Conflict occurs, right? So now you're not arguing about the conflict in regards to why you're late or why dinner wasn't done or why the project wasn't done on time. Now you're arguing over your conflict management styles. Now you're arguing over the differences that now exist because you're choosing not to accommodate anymore. So there are appropriate times and there are inappropriate times. I agree, there's some clients that come in and no matter what you say, how you say, and what direction you point them at, they are already on their high horse and they're not going to go down. I've had those clients as well. In those situations, I have to accommodate, but I'm going to accommodate as much as I can, not go above and beyond and approve them just because I want to approve them. Sir, this is as much as I can do. This is as much as I can help you. This is what I can do for you. I'm not going to focus on what I can't do, because obviously that to them is just, she's saying no, she's being rude, he's not going to help me, he's literally shutting the door in my face. No, this is what I can do. This is how I can help you. Or that we don't have that program here in our agency. However, here's a pamphlet, here's a flyer, here's the information of a program that you can qualify for and that you may be eligible to get all of these services, right? But it's being able to have those tools at hand to be able to better deal with that conflict at hand. Okay, I know I'm bouncing around between close relationships and clients, but again, it's our responsibility to be able to have that balance. It's our responsibility to be able to transfer our conflict management styles at work and at home. And I can honestly say I used to have that problem. I used to be able to collaborate and compromise at work, great. But then at home, it was just, I wanted to be competing or I wanted to be accommodating. And it had to be me to make that, to be able to see that and identify that there was a problem there. I couldn't be compromising and collaborating in one environment and be completely different and act the opposite in another, because I'm only damaging myself. I'm only bringing more conflict to myself because I know what the tools are, yet I'm not using them, right? I'm not using them to the best of my ability to be able to use it. I may have good relationships and positive relationships at work, but I have negative ones at home. And as we all know, when we have something negative going on at home, we tend to bring those at work the next day. We tend to carry them with us, and no matter how positive or how we want to effectively deal with conflict, we tend to focus a lot on our emotions, and we get stuck in this conflict cycle, so to speak, and where we're not balancing our personal life and our work life to be able to have a good balance on our conflict management styles. This goes back to emotional intelligence. If we're able to identify our emotions, what triggers us, what our attitudes are, and how best we can serve our clients, and what we need to do to eliminate some of that extra stress at work to be able to be positive when we go home, it'll be a lot easier for us to develop a trend and where we're every day learning to deal with conflict more effectively. Okay. Avoiding. Avoiding is the last of 5 conflict resolution styles. So avoiding is choosing to avoid the conflict altogether rather than resolving the matter. Okay? Avoidance can be positive and can be negative, right? It's what the situation is at hand, is what we need to do to be able to handle the conflict better. When you avoid conflict altogether, you're choosing not to deal with it, not to discuss it, not to confront the situation, and you pretend that it's going to go away. It's not going to go away. It's still going to be there. Even if you walk away, do what you need to do to be able to be calm, cool, and collective, you come back and guess what? It's still there. Okay? When you avoid conflict, you are choosing for that conflict to possibly grow, right? Because now there may be more individuals involved in that same conflict. You are telling the other person, I don't care, without saying I don't care, okay? You are choosing to let the conflict stay there and be something that builds up into so much negativity that it comes back and explodes in your face. Right? When a problem goes from small to big because we avoid the conflict altogether, then we're choosing more stress in our lives. We are choosing to be able to allow that conflict for being something that we would be able to collaborate or compromise into something that's going to be very time consuming, that could be very emotionally draining, or in some instances, of huge financial strain if it ends up in court, right? However, avoiding a conflict can be positive. There are circumstances, there are situations in where it actually can be favorable to us, okay? Number one, when individuals are arguing, okay, usually they transition from arguing about the situation or the conflict to yelling at each other, right? Or calling each other names, or saying very negative things about each other, or bringing other people into the conflict, or bringing other situations into the conflict. So now you went from a very simple disagreement to something that is so big that to you, it feels like this huge burden that's never going to go away, okay? When you're arguing with an individual and the situation is getting heated, okay, it's up to you to be able to see that. Again, going back to emotional intelligence. You know what? We're not getting anywhere with this. This is something that both of us need time to cool off. We both need to walk away from it and come back when we both have a determination that we're going to deal with this conflict by talking about it and discussing it versus insulting each other back and forth, right? Insulting each other back and forth. When it comes to a client, sir, madam, I see that I'm unable to help you at this time. Let me get a coworker. Let me see if she or he is able to help you, right? Usually when we transition from one person to the other, it's not that we're saying, here, Rita, today it's your turn to deal with this conflict, or giving another person your problem. It's more of being able to walk away because now the situation went from a discussion to it being effectively and having everything to do with you, okay? This person thinks that I'm being rude to them. This person thinks that I'm trying, that I'm not going to help them, and that's not the case. I'm not getting my point across. I need to get someone else to get involved, right? I've seen that happen at a lot of our agency, and it's almost like a transformation that happens right before my eyes, because the conflict is so ingrained in the person that's trying to help them that the words are just flying in the air, and no one's really communicating, and no one's really listening. So when another person comes in, it kind of gives them a whole new situation, okay? Even though it's the same problem that they're going to be talking about. Okay? Avoiding a situation can also be helpful in regards to avoiding violence altogether. Okay? If you know that that person looks so heated that he's about to swing, definitely that is a point in time where the discussion needs to be over. Okay? That is a point in time where someone else needs to step in, or both parties need to walk away altogether. Okay? We actually had a situation come up at one of our mediation cases, in where the two parties were talking about their conflict. They actually came to a resolution. They compromised on meeting halfway, and one of the parties' spouse was hard of hearing. So he heard something, and the facts were different. So once he had everything written down and he was about to sign the agreement, he decided he wasn't going to write the agreement. Okay? And he was arguing and fighting about the issue when it had already been resolved, and he had a cane in his hand. Okay? That cane went flying across the room. Luckily, no one was hurt because it was the mediator's responsibility to be able to have that emotional intelligence to be aware of somebody else's emotions. That person was asked to step out of the mediation room, okay? And the mediation was able to continue without that negativity in the room. As individuals dealing with conflict each and every day, we have to be able to know and understand when we can use each and every management style to help us solve the conflicts. So again, whether that we're competing mode because a decision needs to be made and it needs to be made quickly, okay? Whether we are avoiding the problem because it's too heated, where nobody's communicating positively and no one's actually listening to what the problem is, or being able to accommodate, being able to compromise, or the best one yet, being able to collaborate, being able to see what each other's needs and wants are to be able to do this. Now, can anyone think of any examples that you deal here on a daily basis that you would like to share in terms of what would be the best conflict management style? So think about a client or a repetitive problem that you come across in regards to dealing with the community at large. Anyone? Wow, so what I'm hearing all of you say is that none of you have conflicts here. Correct? Okay.
The avoidance was one of my lowest scores, but I can think of situations where it's an appropriate thing.
Okay.
We've got an issue to work with that's housing related, but the participant wants to continue to complain about all those foreigners getting in the way.
Okay.
I can try and cure him of his racism, but that's not going to fix our housing issue. So trying to avoid that whole foreigner conversation and get back to the real issue that we need to work on is the technique I'll try to use in that situation.
Okay, definitely. As I had stated before, we can't control anyone's emotions and attitudes and behaviors, but we can control our own. So if, like he said, if we know that that's going to be a heated discussion that's going to go from 0 to 60, okay, we definitely don't want to touch that subject. Okay? Anyone else? Yes.
A lot of the programs that we do, they're short term, and so I have found myself in a lot of situations where I may need to term a client service because they're not complying with pieces of their case management plan. And so, usually the client knows, they'll call me and I'll let them know, you know what, I haven't heard from you, you haven't been to your appointment, so this is where we're at right now. And so usually, it's like that very next minute they'll show up at the office and they're already like, they're already at this level.
Right.
And so I just kind of wanted to share a situation. So I met with the client. Already I was the bad guy because, I had pulled them up there with the service. And so, what I have found myself doing in that situation is not avoiding, but I've had to call on other staff. Like one time I actually had Korea. I don't know if you remember Korea, but I had Korea because the client just saw me as a bad guy, and Korea was able to come in and, kind of calm them down. But that was just kind of a situation. We deal with that on a daily basis,
Mhm.
because,
That's the nature of the beast. Now, in regards to that collaboration that you did with your coworker, do you follow up then with your coworker in regards to the end results? Okay, great. Because that's also a way to learn, okay, what did I say or didn't say that you said or didn't do that could help me the next time around this happens? And or you can also communicate with your coworker, did you let them know that that's exactly what I was trying to do? Just so that, again, you're not perceived as this bad person who's trying to prevent them from obtaining your services, is that for some reason there was a miscommunication while you were trying to help them, and it just worked out better with someone else.
Yeah, and I've even, so we've had that conversation after the meeting, and then there was even a point where she was like, well, you want to sit in? And I got to see how she, interacted with the client.
Yes.
And I learned so much from that situation, because I was like, oh, maybe I did come across a little aggressive.
Okay.
Where she kind of just softened her voice. Like sometimes it's just changing your tone.
Oh, yes,
right?
yes.
It kind of makes the client feel more comfortable.
Yep, definitely. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. She actually brings up a really good point in regards to following up on the conflict. This helps us as individuals be aware or make ourselves aware of something that we weren't knowledgeable about. As she said, she became aware of her tone. Okay? My tone could have been different, or my tone could have been perceived negative or aggressive. And so next time, I'm going to make sure that I'm very well aware of my tonality. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I hear myself when I'm talking to the client so that the client doesn't perceive me as someone who's going against them. I want them to see me as someone who's there to help them. Okay? Okay, so each of you received this graph. It's a conflict resolution graph in regards to knowing where you stand in terms of your assertiveness and your cooperativeness, okay? So accommodating, obviously you're very, very cooperative, right? Everyone wants to be your friend if you're going to agree with them all the time. But in regards to your values and your beliefs, your assertiveness is very low. Okay, your assertiveness is very low. When it comes to avoiding, both your cooperation level and your assertiveness is very low. Why? Because you're not talking about the problem, you're not finding ways to resolve the conflict, and you're not stating your beliefs in regards to telling the other person, I want to solve this conflict. I want to acknowledge the fact that there's a problem and that we need to fix it. Okay. Then we have the competing mode at the very top, where you're very assertive, right? You're making yourself very clear. Okay, you want things done a certain way. You're making your points across. However, in terms of cooperativeness, individuals around you are not going to see you as someone approachable. Okay, they're not going to see you as someone that they can bring up new ideas or talk to even. Okay, Then we have collaborative and compromising that are, compromising is in the middle, again, because compromising is when you meet halfway, right, 50-50. And then collaborating would be the ideal one because, again, you're discussing your needs and wants, okay? They all have pros and cons, but it's really up to you to be able, again, to experience each conflict, each situation in and of its own and see what you can learn from it, what you can gain from it. See it as an opportunity to learn and to experience something different rather than seeing it as in a negative perspective, rather than seeing it as a fight, as a quarrel, as a way to collide with someone. And being able to have that balance is something that you don't master, right? It's something that we all have to realize that we have to learn each and every day. Something that we learn that we have to open each and every day. I've heard a lot of the parents that sit down to some of our conflict resolution workshops, and we have the spouse as well. She's never going to change. Well, she's always going to be a certain way, and then vice versa. Well, he always wants things his way. Well, he is always doing it this way. Or the worst part is, well, I've seen her improve, but then she goes back to her old ways. Conflict management is something that we have to work on each and every day. Something that's going to be happen in our lives each and every day. So we have to be open to those experiences and be able to see them as opportunities rather than seeing them, as, here we go again. I know what's going to happen. This is what's going to be said. This is what's going to be done. Okay. When we stick to that train of thought, our life then becomes redundant and routine almost, and then we continue to focus on the negative aspects of conflict, and we continue to add more stress in our lives. But when we decide that it's each and every day a growing experience, then we decide to be able to have a stronger hand on our conflict management skills. My conclusions are very simplistic. It's just treat every conflict as a challenge, as an opportunity, and remember that how you react to a certain conflict is what reaction you're trying to get from the other person. Okay? Know and be very well aware that you can't control their emotions and their attitudes, but you can control your own. So you can design and make things differently to be able to have a more positive perspective in regards to the conflict at hand. Okay? Lastly, it's important that we apply conflict resolution techniques in every day. So the personal example I gave you earlier in regards to how we deal with conflict in the workplace should be transferred to how we deal conflict when we're at home or when we're in the community. Why? Because we want to be able to have that peace of mind. We want to be able to have that balance in our lives where we're not giving our work our all because we want to be able to be positive employees and be acknowledged and walk up that stepping ladder and then come home and give our families the least amount of patience or the least amount of a person who wants to be able to listen to needs and wants to be able to deal with conflict more effectively. We need to practice our skills so that we can build better relationships. We need to treat each person as if each conflict that they're bringing in, each conflict that they're talking about, it's their own conflict. So they are not going to be very happy that you're telling them, this happens all the time, we hear this all the time, because then they're going to feel, oh, I'm just part of the bunch. Oh, I'm less important because the 50 people who came before me already expressed this. No, each person has their own conflict and experiences in their own way because they have their own emotions and their own attitudes towards it. It's really up to us in regards to how we want to use our conflict management skills and be able to have that balance in regards to when it's appropriate and when it's not, and learn from our mistakes. Hey, you know what? I should have done this. I should have said this, or I didn't deal with that conflict as best as I could. Okay, and being able to be okay with it. just because you have these skills doesn't mean we're all going to be, these super awesome, great listeners, and we're going to have great communication skills. It means that we give ourselves the opportunity to work each and every day on the skills that we have at hand. Any questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for inviting me today, for allowing me to share some of our conflict resolution training, and I will be here in February for part 2 of the class. Okay, thank you.